Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the NFL news you need to know about. We do this show each and every single Thursday, so if you like that, hopefully you'll stick around and listen to the rest of the video or go check out the channel. This first news story is really interesting just because he's still a great player in my opinion, and it boggles the mind why he isn't signed. Eric Berry, this comes from Pro Football Rumors, Eric Berry remains on Cowboys' radar. Throughout the 2018 offseason, the Cowboys were connected to Earl Thomas. They eventually offered a second-round pick for him, but Dallas used Jeff Heath and Xavier Woods as its starting safeties last season. Although the Cowboys signed George Iocca and drafted Donovan Wilson in the 6th round, the Heath-Woods duo remains atop the depth chart. The team, however, continues to examine other options. Cowboys VP of Player Personnel Will McClay said during an appearance on a radio show, the Cowboys continue to monitor the status of Eric Berry, but reiterated the team believes in its starters and depth that they have assembled. Berry visited the Cowboys and received some interest from the Browns. Other than that, it's been a quiet offseason for the three-time first-team All-Pro. He's only 30 years old, but the defender has played in just 2 of the last 31 regular season games, having seen Achilles and heel problems set back his career. So he's had a lot of injuries over the last 2 years. Not to mention, he fell ill and missed a lot of time as well. So he does have a bad injury history. But he's such a great player that if you hit, then it's a big hit. It's a huge hit, and you're not really missing that much. And I doubt he's demanding that big of a contract. He's a great player. Again, a 3-time first-team All-Pro. He came into the league on fire. He's always been a great safety. Always been one of the best in the league. He's a great cover. He's versatile. You can use him in a variety of different ways. If you want him to cover a tight end, a slot receiver, I've seen him literally do it all. And he's done it recently too. He did it in the playoffs, and did a very good job when he was asked to. So if you do sign him, I feel like you're still getting a really, really good safety and one of the best in the National Football League. Great ball skills, too. Doesn't drop picks. Great instincts. He's one of the best players in the league, so if he's healthy. So if you're a Cowboys fan, your defense is already pretty dang talented. Getting Eric Berry would, and especially if he could stay healthy, would literally, the Cowboys defense would be probably the best in the league. Definitely one of the most talented, for sure. Byron Jones emerged last year, became one of the best corners in the league. They have a lot of young talent in that secondary that's pretty good. Jeff Heath's not a bad player either. But really where that defense is so good is the front 7, and they're coached so well. You look at DeMarcus Lawrence, Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch. They still have Sean Lee on the roster, I believe. And that front 7 is really, 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 really good. They still have Taco Charlton, who they're hoping becomes something. They just signed Robert Quinn, and as a hardcore Dolphins fan, I can tell you, if he is just rushing the quarterback, he's a good player. He's not a good all-around defensive end, but he's going to a good coach in Ron Molinari, or however you say his name. I always get his name. For some reason, it's such a big tongue twister for me, but he's one of the best coaches in the league, and Robert is a very talented player. It's just, he hasn't been the same since those some of the most dominant years by a defensive end ever. But if he can click, then that front 7 is probably the best in the league. You look at, I'm assuming Dallas is running a 4-3 this year. So you can still get all 3 of those linebackers on the field. And if they can do that and find a way to do that on a consistent basis, because they could do all 3 downs. Like Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith, both super athletic guys. And they have Sean Lee, who's one of the smartest players in the league. That team is going to be very, very, very good this upcoming season on defense. It's going to be very, very, very good. And if they sign Eric Berry, that could be dangerous. They could make a very deep playoff run if Eric Berry can go back to his old self. Plus, didn't he played college in Texas as well, so could be a little bit of a homecoming. This next news story, well, I don't want to get into it because it is a little businessy, But we'll just read the title because it's so long. I don't want to get into it. But NFL, NFLPA far apart on CBA revenue split. So they're obviously continuing negotiations. And hopefully we don't get a too big of a work stoppage if that happens. Hopefully they can come to an agreement. But we'll read a little bit of it. Again, this next news story, NFLPA, which is the Players Association, far apart on CBA revenue split. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. While the NFL and the NFLPA met multiple times before the recent summit, the most recent meeting provided the clearest picture as to the status of the next collective bargaining agreement. This may not be progressing as well on both sides. The session in Chicago represented the first time during the CBA negotiation cycle that the parties exchanged proposals. Albert Breer of SportsIllustrated.com notes, with the revenue split entering the equation, a 4.5-hour meeting led to the rest of the week's powwows being nixed because the sides were too far apart on Monday's follow-up meeting, morphed from a key negotiation session to a meeting based around more peripheral matters. The revenue split subject was not on today's agenda. The league and the union are still slated to meet Tuesday, Breer adds, but it's unclear if the big picture subjects will be discussed. The parties' next summit is scheduled for mid-August. League owners wanted more time to plan a new proposal. Having seen the players for the first time, according to Breer, the players are also planning to amend their initial proposal. So they're far apart on the revenue split, so that's what they're arguing about. Hopefully this does not lead to a lockout when that time comes. Hopefully they can come to an agreement and get things done. Hopefully it's beneficial to the players. I feel like the owners need to chill out. I've said this many times, but they're getting enough money. They need to give up a little bit. I feel like it's time for them to tip the hat a little bit here. But the NFL is definitely ran different than any other sports. Now, I don't know how the NHL and MLB are ran, but I do know how the NBA is ran, and that is definitely a players' league more than any other league, at least that I know of. Maybe it's different in the NHL or MLB, but sometimes I wish the NFL was that way to a certain extent. Not in terms of how players are positioned on teams, but in terms of money. You would like to see that happen in the NFL. The NFL makes more money than any other league. They have more viewers each game than any other league. So the players deserve a bigger cut, and hopefully they'll get it. This next news story, Theo Riddick down to Broncos and Saints. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Theo Riddick generated some interest after the Lions ended his six-year tenure last week, and the seventh-year pass-catching back looks to be decided between the two teams he visited. It appears to be a Broncos or Saints decision for the veteran back. So this is an interesting news story. Theo Riddick is a very good role player, and he's a great change-up back. So if I'm Theo Riddick, I'm definitely going to the Saints because that is a beautiful. I mean, they've used the running backs in the past game all the time. Plus, they just lost Mark Ingram. You're going to a great scheme that can elevate your talents. They're going to use you a lot. So if I'm Theo Riddick, I'm definitely going to the Saints. Because if you look at the Saints roster, they don't have for as good as they've been over the last 2 years. If you look at their offense, now that the two backs have split, they're not the most talented team. Their depth is not they don't have depth all over the place. Their offensive line is one of the more underrated lines in the league in terms of pass blocking. But if you look at the receiver core, it's not that deep. Their tight ends aren't great. Their running backs used to be the best part of the offense, and now it's not. So I don't know. I feel like the Saints aren't going to have as good of a year as they did last year. It's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. But if I'm Theo Riddick, I'm going to the Saints. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. All these news stories come from Pro Football Rumors, in case I forget to mention. Cowboys to sign Alfred Morris. As Ezekiel Elliott stays away from the Cowboys camp, the team will bring back one of his former backups. Alfred Morris has agreed to rejoin the Cowboys, Ian Rappaport of NFL.com tweets. Morris was scheduled to visit with the Saints, but it looks like he found a more enticing offer with one of his former teams. Morris, 30, played in 28 games for the Cowboys from 2016 to 2017. He closed his first Dallas stint by averaging 4.8 yards per carry for the 2017 Cowboys. The Cowboys have exchanged proposals with their holdout back, but Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News notes that the last such numbers were discussed July 25th. In the meantime, Morris will serve as by far the most experienced back that the Cowboys have. Alfred Morris has had a very weird career. He's one of the, his rookie year, I think he came in with RG3, right? He had a great year that year. And I think he actually followed it up the next 2 years with pretty solid years. Ever since then, I don't know what the heck happened to him. He kept that tradition of Mike Shanahan late round running backs being great. And ever since that happened, I think really ever since he got out of Shanahan's offense, he hasn't really been the same. But even when he was with the I remember his year in 2017 with the Cowboys. It was actually pretty good. He's a very good runner. He's just not very versatile. And that's what you're kind of looking for, especially for a backup running back. You need someone who's going to bring something different to the team if they're coming off the bench. You need someone who can run the ball and catch the ball, is what you would like. They do have Rod Smith on their roster, who I feel like probably he's not as good of a runner, but he's definitely a better receiver than Alfred Morris. But that's probably why Alfred isn't on a team, because I still feel like he's a good runner. He's got that Frank Gore-ness to him, where he always gains a yard. He's never going to lose yards. He'll get you 5 yards in a cloud of dust. He's a old school running back, just not as versatile as some of the other guys. And that is why you draft running backs for probably, especially nowadays that you look at it, a lot of running backs are just drafted to do one specific thing nowadays. Now, if you can find a Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara or a David Johnson or an Ezekiel Elliott or a Saquon Barkley or Todd Gurley that can do everything, then that's when you have something special. Or Le'Veon Bell. And that's why I think those players need to be paid more, is because they affect the game in so many different ways. And they deserve it. But I guess that's why Alfred Morris is not a hot commodity anymore. This next two stories is just a quick one. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Texans give raise to cornerback Jonathan Joseph. The Texans gave cornerback Jonathan Joseph a raise, as Field Yates of ESPN.com tweets. In the revised deal, Joseph receives a $1.5 million signing bonus and a base salary bump from $2.9 million to $4 million. Good for Jonathan Joseph. It seems like this man has been in the league for years now. Like, a long time. He was a part of that Texans turnaround when the Texans had Matt Schaub, and they're actually pretty good. They just couldn't win in the playoffs. But they had really, really good regular season games. That team was very, very good with Gary Kubiak at the helm. And he was a big part of that. Next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Steelers reconstruct Stephon Tuitt's deal. The Steelers have converted $5.1 million of defensive lineman Stephon Tuitt's $6 million base salary into a signing bonus, according to ESPN.com. This move will create $3.9 million in desperately needed cap space for the Steelers. Heading into Tuesday, the Steelers had just $1 million in breathing room, the lowest in the NFL. Now that the Steelers have roughly $5 million in space, the Broncos, $4 million, have the least amount of cap room in the league. Tuitt, 26, registered 5.5 sacks and 45 tackles in 14 games last season. A full-time starter since 2015, Tuitt has 20 sacks to his credit, but has yet to play in a full 16-game slate since joining the team. Last year, Tuitt agreed to a similar okay, who cares? Stephon Tuitt, good player. He's a lot like Cameron Hayward, actually, who plays on the same line as him. But, not as good, obviously. But he's a solid player. I really wonder where all that cap's going to for the Steelers. Where's that money going? Maybe to the offensive line? Or, I know Big Ben. Juju is still on his rookie deal. Who the heck is getting all that money is what I want to know. Maybe I'm blanking on some names. I know the Broncos definitely. That makes sense. But not the Steelers is a little weird. This next news story is actually interesting because there's a follow-up. There's a follow-up to this one, which is really interesting because as a Dolphins fan, this news perks my interest. So, very interesting stuff here. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Redskins to sign tackle Donald Penn. The Redskins have made a major upgrade on the offensive line. The team is set to sign veteran tackle Donald Penn to a one-year deal, according to Ian Rappaport of NFL.com. Penn will provide the Redskins with serious insurance against Trent Williams' very serious holdout. His presence also means that the team won't have to rely on heavily criticized Eric Flowers, a former draft bust of the rival Giants, who was originally signed to play in the interior. The Redskins expressed interest in Penn during his 2014 free agency, and many years later, they have finally got their man. Penn is a proven commodity, though he was shelved by injury for most of the 2018 season. Prior to that, he started in 174 of 176 possible games, dating back to 2007. This might not be the end of the team's offensive line shuffling. The Redskins could still use some depth, particularly at guard, and the club could explore trading Williams now that they have a proper fill-in. So there's another story that links to the story, so I'm not going to get into the other story until we get there. But I mean, this is a great sign. I wish we would have done this as Dolphins, as a Dolphins fan, to get Donald Penn in here to move him inside. That would have been nice. He's a very good player. He's older than the hills, but he's still a good player. He just didn't play much last year due to injury, and that could be due to age. That does happen to veteran NFL players. So I don't know. That's a great move by the Redskins, especially if this next news story comes true later in the episode. But if they do end up keeping Trent Williams, then they have probably the best depth at tackle in the league. But yeah, definitely missed opportunity if your team has a bad offensive line, or has question marks on the offensive line, or has depth needs on the offensive line. Because Donald Penn definitely could be the best reliever in the National Football League. And it's interesting, if the 18-game schedule became a thing, he would be a very hot commodity in NFL free agency. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins interested in Robert Nkemdiche, or however you say his name. The Dolphins are among the teams that have they've done their due diligence and calls about Robert. Barry Jackson, the Miami Herald, said, again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors, says the former first-round pick of the Cardinals was released this week and cleared waivers, making him a free agent. Robert is an interesting case. He has loads of potential, but he's still recovering from a torn ACL in December. The good news is that he is expected to be ready for action in September and likely won't cost much for the Dolphins or any other interested club. In the case of the Dolphins, a multi-year deal or a deal with a team option for the 2020 season would make a lot of sense, given their ongoing rebuilding efforts. The 24-year-old defensive lineman, 25 in September, had no sacks until last season when he registered 4.5 quarterback takedowns. Injuries have been a constant for him. The Mississippi product has only appeared in 27 games over the 3 years for Arizona. Yeah, he's had a bad career. I think he was arrested earlier this year. Maybe this was some time ago. I don't know. He hasn't had a good career. He has been a bust. And we do need, I say we because I'm a Dolphins fan, in case you don't know. And I know most of the guys, or maybe every single one of you, actually listen to the Dolphins podcast that I do. But in case you don't, now you do. The Dolphins do need depth at the defensive line position. They need as much competition in that room as possible. So it does make sense to me that they're interested in him. He's definitely not a good pass rusher. He's a solid run defender. But he is definitely, he's never been a good pass rusher, so I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. If I'm the Dolphins, I could care less about. I'm definitely not interested. That's for sure. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Raiders sign Ethan Westbrooks. The Raiders have signed defensive lineman Ethan Westbrooks, according to a team announcement. In related moves, they have waived defensive lineman Ronald Ollie. and tight end Eric Swoop. I think this is Ollie. Yeah. Westbrook spent his first 5 years with the Rams and started in 9 contests for LA in 2017. And that last season, he registered 4 sacks, making it a new career high. Not really much to say about that one. It looks like the Raiders are just trying to add depth to that defensive line. Raiders are a very interesting team. They play in a very tough division, but they have a talented offense and a very talented play caller. Their offensive line is definitely better than it was a year ago. Their backfield's better. Their receiver core is way better. They have Seth Roberts, Tyrell Williams, and Antonio Brown. Their tight end situation's pretty decent. That offense should actually be very fun to watch. They actually were good on offense last year statistically. They just weren't a very good team. So making that talent jump, plus they still have Brandon LaFell, who was a very good addition for them last year, came in and played very well for them in that scheme. So that offense, I feel like, is going to be one of the best in the league. It's just the defense that is going to be, especially since the division they play in with the Chiefs and Chargers, both very good offenses and both very well-ran teams and a lot of depth on both offenses. Both have great quarterbacks. That's a tough task for that defense to handle. They definitely have the worst defense in their division. I'd say they probably had the... I'd say they probably would have the second tied. That's a tough one. I would say they have the second best offense in their division. The thing that really comes down to is Mike Williams on the Chargers going to be consistent? He had a great year last year, but I think that's probably where it comes down to. So Raiders are going to have an interesting year this upcoming season. Hard Knocks can be really fun to watch with John Gruden and the crew. This next news story, again, comes from Pro Football Rumors. The latest on Bengals' A.J. Green. Bengals star A.J. Green underwent a minor ankle procedure on Tuesday morning to clean out his ankle after his injury. A source tells Ian Rappaport at NFL.com that there's good news. His timeline should remain the same as before, so week 1 is still possible for the wide receiver. Initially ruled a standard sprain, Green's injury may cost him regular season time. However, it's not as scary as it first appeared. Green was carted off the practice field last week, creating a scary scene in Cincinnati. The timing is less than ideal for a number of reasons. Personally, for Green, it comes in the midst of a contract negotiation that was on course to put him near the top of the wide receiver list for average salary. So yeah, that sucks for AJ Green. He's always had injury issues, but he's one of the more underrated players in the NFL. If he keeps the production that he has up, he will be a Hall of Famer. And he's always been very high on the top 100 list, which is apparently made by the NFL, the players. So he's had a great career. It's crazy that he's been in the league as long as he has. It feels like yesterday that he came in the league, but he's I don't even think he's ever had missed 1,000 yards throughout his career. I don't think he has. Maybe he barely has, but I know ever since his rookie season, I think he's had 1,000 yards, and he's one of the best in the league. One of the best route runners for a big man, probably of all time. It's between him, Calvin, and Julio, and that's a tough group there. But AJ Green has a finesse to his game that not many big receivers have. And that's what probably makes him special. Not a physical receiver, can run right by you. Great route runner, great hands, great in the red zone, and one of the more underrated players in the National Football League. Speaking of wide receivers, Saints Michael Thomas. Okay, well, actually, we're not there just yet. We got a couple news stories before we get there. I was going to say we're going to talk about Michael Thomas, but we'll wait for that. This is a smaller news story. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Bengals signed cornerback Tony Lippett. The Bengals signed free agent cornerback Tony Lippett, according to Ian Rappaport of NFL.com. To make room, they waived linebacker Chris Worley. For Lippett, a former second-round pick, it's a new adventure and a familiar scheme. He spent time with the defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo in Miami, so he may have a leg up on the competition as he guns for a spot on the 53-man roster. Lippett transformed from a collegiate wideout to an NFL corner and made 13 starts with the Fins in 2016. However, he missed the 2017 season with a torn Achilles and missed the club's final cut downs in 2018. He bounced around a bit last year, including a 3-game stint with the New York Giants. Well, before Tony hurt himself, I think he had 4 picks in 2016, help us get to the playoffs. And I think as Dolphins fans, we forget how good he was before the injury, and hopefully he can come back to being, that good, because he was a good player. Unfortunately, the injury bug hit him. Hasn't been the same since, but he had that 4 interception season. He had a very good year in 2016, and hopefully he can bounce back and have a good career, because he is a very good player. So if you're a Bengals fan, you could be getting a very solid corner. This next news story, also from Pro Football Rumors, the Cardinals sign defensive end Andre Branch. The Cardinals are bringing in another veteran edge defender. Former Jaguars and Dolphins defensive end Andre Branch agrees to terms with the Cardinals on a 1-year deal. Branch spent the past 3 seasons in Miami, but was one of many veterans the Dolphins just jetted out of the organization this offseason. The Cardinals recently released Matt LaCars, or however you say that name, and Branch looks like the team's latest veteran depth option, and it's Chandler Jones with Terrell Suggs fronted group. Branch 30 met with the Cardinals in June. I think it's Matt Lacoste or Lacroix, or something like that. While Branch has only played in the 4-3 schemes, the Cardinals are likely adding him to be a pass rusher, so his role in the 3-4 scheme likely does not stand to be too different. Branch also played under new Cardinals DC Vance Joseph in 2016, but no other teams was connected to this 7-year veteran this offseason. No other teams were connected. Yeah, if you're a Cardinals fan and you're getting Andre Branch, I'm not really sure. I guess you stand him up and rush him, but if he's he's a liability in coverage, so the scheme's going to have to be a little bit different in terms of you're probably going to have to hide him in some different ways so he doesn't get caught in coverage, but yeah, Andre Branch is not. He's okay. He's not good, but he's okay. He's a good rotational player. He's not a good 3-down guy. He's not a consistent pass rusher, I would say. He's not a physical player. He's a liability in run defense, I would say. But in a 3-4 system, that really he should be better, and he shouldn't be. He's got to set the edge, but it's not as hard as a 4-3 defender as a defensive end than it is a 3-4 outside linebacker having to play run defense. It's a little bit easier. You have a little bit more space to make a move as an athlete as opposed to have your hand in the dirt and having to take on a blocker head on. You can use some of your athleticism a little bit more as someone standing up and a little bit off ball. So that should help him, because he does struggle against the run. Let's see, where do I want to take you guys now? This next news story, so if you're a Ravens fan, this is good news for you. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Ravens Marquise Brown medically cleared. Marquise Brown, or Marquise, however you say his name, stay on the Hollywood Brown. Let's just call him that. Stay on the Ravens active /PUP list. Looks to be nearing an end. The first-round wide receiver received medical clearance on Tuesday. After passing his conditioning test last week, Brown has since passed his physical. The Oklahoma produced deep threat has been rehabbing a Liz Frank injury since before the combine. Brown, who underwent foot surgery in January, is now on track to play in each of Baltimore's preseason games. This is welcome news for a Ravens team that has a few new skill position contributors around a developing quarterback. Yeah, I thought he was the best receiver in the draft this last draft. He reminds me a lot of Tyreek Hill in the way you can use him. He's probably not as fast as Tyreek Hill, but you can use him the same way, and he's probably going to do the same because he does, that's what he did at college. You just use him, you just get him in space. And it takes the top off the defense for the Ravens. He's a good route runner too, man. He's a very good all-around receiver. I know a lot of people were concerned about his weight, but and it is, I think he was like 160 something pounds, which is not good. He definitely needs to do something about that. But he's been compared to Deshaun Jackson, and that's probably a very good comparison. If Deshaun Jackson came into the league right now, he would be Tyreek Hill, the way that the Chiefs use Tyreek Hill. If you had a smart offensive coordinator, they would just use him the same way. And Marquise Hollywood Brown, or Marquise, however you say his name, going into this offense, which is super run heavy, presents a great challenge for a defense. If you do not have a good defensive coordinator who can come up with some kind of smart game plan, and even if you do, it presents a very, 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 very big challenge for defense. Because, in my opinion, he is an all-around receiver. So if you play off, I think he can beat you short. And especially if he catches the ball short, he can make you miss and go 80 yards for a touchdown. The thing about him is, can he stay healthy? Because of his low weight, he's not a big dude. He's already got this injury, and he hasn't played it down in the National Football League. He definitely needs to bulk up. But the Ravens definitely, I think, they've struggled to find a receiver over the last few years with the whole Brashard Perryman thing. That didn't work out, and they've had a number of different high draft picked receivers that haven't worked out. But this one's gonna work out. He's a very good player, and especially he fits their scheme to a T in terms of he can benefit from the scheme and how defenses have to play that scheme. Last year they really didn't have a deep threat like him who can run her out short to intermediate, and he can go deep. And you can get, throwing the ball in the backfield and he can make something happen. So he should have a good rookie season if he can stay healthy. This next news story again, I keep saying Pro Football Rumors, I'm sure you guys know that. This is a quick one. We're not even really going to get into it. Jets to meet with left tackle Sam Young. He came in. I would say Sam Young's best stint of his career was in 2016 when he came in for relief of Brandon Albert. He did a good job for a few games. I think the two games that stand out the most are the Niners game and the Rams game, which he did a very good job. The Seahawks extend. This is another fast one. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Seahawks extend long snapper Tyler Ott. Now this is probably the news story of the episode. Saints Michael Thomas agreed to a mega deal, and this is an awesome news story, not just for Michael Thomas, but for the entire National Football League and some of the other big time receivers that are coming up that deserve this kind of money. It's a done deal. Again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors, and it's one for the record books. On Wednesday morning, the Saints and Michael Thomas agreed to a 5-year, $100 million extension with $61 million guaranteed. Adam Schefter of ESPN.com tweets. The new deal makes him the league's highest paid receiver of all time on a yearly basis. With the new deal, Thomas is tied to New Orleans through the 2024 season. In 2019, he still earn a partly $1 million, so he still earns the $1 million left on his rookie contract. That's pretty cool. The deal marks plenty of firsts for the Saints as well. They've never paid a non-quarterback skill position player more than $10 million per year, but they're now paying Thomas $20 million per year. The previous watermark was owned by tight end Jimmy Graham, who banked $10 million a season. Last season, Thomas set records with 125 catches, almost 1,500 yards, while adding 9 touchdown grabs. He was widely efficient too. Thomas's catch rate is 84%, was the highest of any NFL receiver since 2001. With Thomas's deal done, the attention will now shift to fellow standout wide receiver in search of their own monster contracts. Unlike Thomas, Falcon star Julio Jones has participated in training camp, but he's expecting a contract that will either match or exceed Thomas's in average annual value. There is also star receiver A.J. Green, who is also in the mix for a new contract. So when I think about Michael Thomas, I don't, he is a top 5 receiver, but when you look at the stats, you're like, wow, like it kind of reminds you, and the thing when I think about Michael Thomas, I think about his playoff games that he's had. I mean, he is a big time player, and Todd Gurley last year, who's a great player, didn't show up, and whether that was due to injuries or whatever it was, you want your superstars, especially if you're going to pay him $100 million, to play big in the biggest games, and he does. He's a clutch player. He's a great player. He's an all-around player. Big dude. I really have never seen a player of his size be able to go into the slot and be that dominant. It's pretty special. He's got a huge catch radius. Drew Brees, ever since he's came into the league out of Ohio State, they've had great chemistry. He's actually a pretty good run after the catch receiver too. He's not fast by any stretch of the imagination, but he's just a great receiver. And he deserves the money he's getting. And the guys that are coming up after him, man, they deserve even more. I mean, Julio Jones deserves all the money in the world, and so does AJ Green. So hopefully they get paid. This is a great day for the NFL. You wish probably it could even get bigger, obviously, when you look at some of the NBA salaries and stuff of that nature, and hopefully it does with this new collective bargaining agreement thing. But the fact that think about it. So when 2024 comes around, what do you think the receiver market's going to be? And the fact that this is only a 5-year deal, which is a long time, is pretty good for Michael Thomas. So good for him. He deserved it, and didn't get a lot of love coming out of college. Didn't get a lot of love, and he's turned out to be one of the best players in the league. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Ravens released Jordan Lasley. They released Jordan Lasley. The Ravens have released wide receiver Jordan Lasley, according to a team announcement. When speaking with reporters, head coach John Harbaugh explained that the 2018 fifth-round pick was cut because of football reasons and not his conduct at a chippy practice on Monday. Earlier this week, Lasley traded blows with cornerback Cyrus Jones, and the two had to be separated by players and coaches. Soon after he returned to the field, Lasley caught a touchdown pass and launched the ball over the fence into a nearby pond. Yeah. He actually had a good preseason last year, so that's interesting. I doubt he was actually cut for just football reasons, because that's one heck of a coincidence to do that and then be cut, to punch a player in practice and then be cut the next or the same or next day. That's in the midst of training camp. That's a little, when the team doesn't have that great of depth on the receiver in terms of receivers, is interesting. Wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers picked him up though, because if I do remember correctly, he had a good preseason. So, yeah. This is the most interesting news story of this entire episode. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Redskins discussing a Trent Williams trade, which is huge news. The Redskins are having trade discussions regarding tackle Trent Williams, according to a source who spoke with Jeff Howe of The Athletic. It's unclear as to what they're seeking in a trade, but there's a feeling around the league that the Patriots would be involved. There's reportedly no end in sight to Williams' holdout with the Redskins, so it only makes sense for the club to see what's out there. They also just added veteran tackle Donald Penn to the mix. There's a safety net in place in case they can't smooth things out with Williams. Williams has 2 years to go on his contract with $24 million in total remaining. He also hasn't played a full season since 2013 and has missed 13 games over the last 3 years, but he's still an elite left tackle on the field. With the depth issues at tackle, the Patriots would be a natural landing spot for Williams. It also helps the Patriots carve additional cap space by reconstructing Marcus Canda's contract on Wednesday. So that's a coincidence that they did that, so they could free up space to potentially trade for Williams. Even after that adjustment, the Pats have only $7 million in cap room, and would have to fit Williams' $11 million base salary under the cap. Yeah, so that's an issue. Now, I am super biased toward this news because if Trent Williams is legit on the trade block, listen, the Dolphins are a perfect situation for Trent Williams as a person because he's looking for a new big deal. We have the cap space to do it. We need an offensive lineman. And if we get Trent Williams, who's had a Hall of Fame career, Now, he's had a lot of injury issues, but that could potentially change the season for us, because that is the only weak spot on offense, is the offensive line. And so if you're not a Dolphins fan, if I'm saying this, that probably sounds, if you're not a Dolphins fan, that probably sounds crazy to you. And I'm not going to sit here and explain why I do believe that. But I will say this: if Trent Williams is on the Dolphins' offensive line, Laramie and Trent Williams, wherever the Dolphins decide to play Trent Williams, whether that be guard or tackle, that's one of the best two offensive linemen in the league, if not the best. So if the Dolphins have any brains, they will at least look into this, because that could be potentially a big deal. And for any team that gets Trent Williams, that would be a huge deal. You're getting one of the best offensive linemen in the National Football League. He can he could play guard, he could play tackle, he could do whatever the heck you want him to do. He's great. He's super athletic. He completely changes what you can do in the running game in terms of scheme. Like, he's such an important player to that team. And when he's on the field, they're a way better team. And especially since, they have these great running backs. And I think Adrian Peterson said in Trent Williams' Top 100 video this year that he's the best offensive lineman he's ever played with. Because of the way he pulls and the way he, especially from the tackle position, the way he can change your run scheme for the better is ridiculous, and he's a great pass blocker too. So he could change your franchise, and the fact that the Redskins don't want to pay him is ridiculous. They can tell themselves all the excuses they want, but whoever gets Trent Williams is going to be very happy for the next few years. Which is, insane. And if I don't know what the Redskins would ask for a tackle, but he is so good, dude. Like, he is insanely good. I doubt they're going to get a first-round pick for him, so if it's a second-round pick, that's a steal. This is a quick one. We're just going to read the headline. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Raiders to work out running back Mike Gillislee. So if that's any interest to anyone. This is another quick one. Redskins sign guard Hugh Thornton to add some depth there, which is what they needed. That comes from Pro Football Rumors. We're almost done. There's not a lot of news. Oh, no, we're not almost done. I don't think so. This is another quick one. Raiders audition fullback Derek Coleman and Tommy Bohannon. Comes from Pro Football Rumors. Which the Raiders actually use fullbacks. Tommy Bohannon's a very good fullback, so be interesting to see if they get him. This is a big news story for your Panthers fan. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Panthers to sign safety Trey Boston, and they have signed him. The Trey Boston's lengthy tenure as a free agent is over. The Panthers are signing the veteran safety to a 1-year, $3 million deal. For the second consecutive offseason, Boston had to wait until late July to land a new contract as a free agent. Last year, Boston landed a $1 million deal from the Cardinals, so he'll realize a 100% raise for the 2019 campaign, which will pay. He'll pay for pay. I didn't mean to say pay. He'll play for the club that originally drafted him. Boston was a fourth-round choice of the Panthers in 2014, and subsequently spent 3 seasons in Carolina, starting 10 games in his final year with the team. He was cut with 1 year remaining on his rookie deal, and was then signed to a 1-year deal with the Chargers and Cardinals. In both campaigns, Boston started at least 13 games, played at least 950 defensive snaps, and graded among the top 30 safeties in the National Football League. In 2017, Boston was caught up in a stagnant free agent safety market which saw several starting caliber players, including Boston's new teammate Eric Reed, Carolina can use all the help they can get against opponents' deep passing attacks, and Boston, who is deployed as a deep safety on nearly every snap, can help. Last season, the Panthers ranked just 29th in yards per play allowed on passes more than 15 yards in the air, and finished 27th in Football Outsiders' DVOA against deep passes. Some of the blame is for the lackluster performance can be blamed on Mike Adams, who served as the Panthers' primary free safety in 2018. Adams, who last year who played last year at age 37, posted arguably the worst season of his lengthy career. Was not re-signed this offseason. He'll be replaced by Boston, who, along with Reed, will form one of the league's most underrated safety duos. This is a huge deal if you're a Panthers fan, because you have one of the best defenses in the league. You have two very good outside corners, and James Bradbury and Dante Jackson. Dante Jackson, if you don't know, had 4 interceptions his rookie year. James Bradbury, one of the most underrated players in the National Football League. And they have one of the best front sevens. And when you talk about depth and rotations, in rotation, their defensive line is the best in the league. They have so many good pass rushers on that team, and the interior is the best in the league. They have Dontari Poe, Gerald McCoy, and Kawan Short, all former Pro Bowlers and all former All-Team Pros as well. So that defensive line and secondary is one of the best in the National Football League. They have 2, again, great shutdown out. James Bradbury is one of the best corners in the league. Just watch him play. He's so good. The only hole that they had was safety. And Trey Boston, one of the things that he's done over his career is get interceptions. He's a very smart player. He's not the most athletically gifted, and that's probably why he hasn't been signed. But he's a very smart player. And to add him to a team that you're not going to get a lot of time if you're a quarterback should benefit him a lot, because he is a very smart player, and I think he will take advantage of a very good front seven. And apparently, Eric Reed is having a very good training camp as well. So that defense is shaping up to be the best in the National Football League, with Luke Kuechly quarterbacking it. So this should be a very fun unit to watch. All right. Where do I want to take you guys next? This is the last news story of the day, and it's actually a very entertaining one. And the most recent one. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors, and it's about Ezekiel Elliott. The Ezekiel Elliott, excuse me. You take a deep breath, so my brain doesn't fall out of my head. The Ezekiel Elliott headline headache continues. TMZ Sports, a new lawsuit alleges the Cowboys conspired with the police to cover up info from a 2017 car crash that would have sidelined Elliott from a crucial NFL playoff game. The plaintiff in the suit claims that he was hit by Elliott's car just 4 days before Dallas' playoff game against Green Bay, and further alleges the Cowboys didn't want the accident reported because Elliott would have been placed in the concussion protocol, potentially endangering his availability for the playoff game. Additionally, the plaintiff is suing the Cowboys for damages, but as Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk explains, it's highly unlikely Dallas gets dragged into this suit. What a weird, what is going on with them? First of all, we talked about it, I think, the last 2 podcasts. You need to pay Ezekiel Elliott. I know that people want to sit here and talk about, running backs are this and running backs are that, and, they're disposable and they're not worth the long-term deals. That's not true. A running back affects the field more than a receiver does. And, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. Look at it. First of all, I think Alvin Kamara, according to the players, is the 13th best player in the league. And I think Todd Gurley was the 5th best player in the league. And it's because of the way that they... Dude, first of all, do you know how much of a matchup nightmare it is to have a Todd Gurley or a Christian McCaffrey or an Alvin Kamara on a linebacker or safety? I dare you to blitz a team with those running backs on it. It completely changes how you prepare for, and especially if you have a great quarterback, how you prepare for a team that week. To have a running back that is so versatile like that, you're missing, not only you're missing a great runner, but you're missing a great pass catcher as well that can make a lot of plays in the passing game. And especially with this new offense getting installed, I don't understand what the Cowboys are doing. I think he's holding out in Mexico or something like that. Now that we hear this weird news, and who can the only reason we hear about this is because they're the Cowboys. But now, and I think this guy's probably just jumping on the fact that Ezekiel Elliott's in the news, but we're digging stuff up from years ago that apparently first of all, how would he even know that the Cowboys tried to cover it up? That doesn't make any sense. What did they do? Bribe him? I don't really get that. why would you just tell the cops that, yeah, I was just, hit by Ezekiel Elliott? And you must have known, or you either got out of the car or something. I don't know. That's a very weird. Maybe I didn't understand the news story all that well, or I don't know. It's late, But that's weird. It's very weird. But if I was Jerry Jones, this would be a no-brainer for me. And I know they have all these great players coming up for that are up on new deals. I don't know if I think I think they paid Dak. I'm not quite sure about that, but if not, they still have Dak. They have a bunch of young players that are coming up. They just got Leighton Vander Esch, who, down the line is going to need to get paid. Byron Jones. They got a lot of young players that need to be paid. But Ezekiel Elliott is better than all of them, so they need to do something about that. I don't know what this nonsense is, like this is either, something that the Cowboys digged up to, lower the I don't know, man. Very weird. If I'm Zeke, I could care less. This sounds very... Unless he did, unless this was, some weird... Yeah, the Cowboys covered it up. But not the fact that it's because they covered it up because he would be in concussion protocol. What? Just because you got in a car accident, and I've been in, a few car accidents in my life, does not, and I've never gotten a concussion from them, does not mean you got a concussion. I'm not really sure what this is, it's a very weird thing to, go to court over, I guess. It's like, what the heck are we actually here for? What is the evidence? And how do you know he got a concussion, sir? Are you a doctor? I mean, my God. Yeah, so that's going to be it for this week. It'd be hilarious, though, if that guy was a doctor. He could be a doctor. He's like, yeah, as he got out of the car, I examined him. Full-on concussion exam. He had a concussion. And he still played that very week. Now, if that was the story, then I'm like, okay, this guy's got some grounds to stand on. And if you're Zeke, why aren't you paying this man the damages or whatever the heck? Insurance, I don't know. If, insurance companies or whatever the heck's involved. That seemed like that should be taken care of. Unless it was a hit and run. I don't know. It's very weird news story. A lot of layers, as Shrek would say, to that one. So yeah, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. That's all the news you need to know. The NFL season's right around the corner. Preseason's even closer than that. And I am SkyX83. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you guys will go subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next one.